Welcome to another episode of the State of African Agriculture. Today, we'll be speaking with Alice Ingabire. She's the Access to Seeds Index lead. Access to Seed Index is one of the benchmarks for the World Benchmarking Alliance. It was set out to develop transformative benchmarks that would compare companies' performance to the SDGs. We'll be discussing the Access to Seed Index today. Join me. So, Alice, thanks for joining us today. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Wandie. Thank you for hosting me. It's nice to see you today.
Thank you. So, we wanted to talk more about the Access to Seed Index and what it's about. Can you give me a little bit of background on what the Access to Seed Index is, how seed companies are being rated compared to the SDGs, and specifically for improving production and sustainability?
So the Access to Seeds Index exists to bridge a gap between smallholder farmers and seed companies. It assesses and scores and ranks seed companies according to their effort to provide quality seeds of improved varieties to smallholder farmers in developing countries. And so the goal of the index is mostly to create transparency around the activities of seed companies and also identify leadership and best practices in the industry. The insights we get provided from the index will also help with pushing the conversation within the seed industry on its role and responsibilities. And we know as a benchmarking tool, the index also incentivizes these companies to improve their performances over time. So we have a methodology. This methodology is used to assess seed companies, reflecting the stakeholders' expectations. And this methodology usually covers the research scope, and this research scope gives us the areas of analysis and benchmarking. And so an example of the scope is the geographic scope for access to seeds, where we look at companies' activities in 4 regions, in West and Central Africa, Eastern and Southern Africa. We also look in South and Southeast Asia. And then we try to also understand what is happening in Latin America, except that we don't have a particular index for Latin America. So overall, all this information is assessed for a few selected companies. And for 2021, we will assess 72 seed companies who operate in 3 regions. So that again will be for West and Central Africa. And they will all be assessed on looking at 6 measurement areas that we've already published in our final methodology. And again, this also reflects where stakeholders see the role for seed companies that were selected.
Okay, so you mentioned 72 seed companies, I guess 72 seed companies in Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, but I wanted to talk more about African countries. From your research and your work with the index, what are the trends? What are the results you're seeing from African seed companies?
For how companies are working in African region, especially Sub-Saharan Africa. I want to also first kind of elaborate a little bit on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so for Access to Seeds Index, we focus on SDG 2, and that is zero hunger. And so that aims to end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and also promote sustainable agriculture. And according to UN, it looks like the number of people who suffer from hunger has been increasing since 2015, whereas the decade before it had started to decline. And then it also shows that recently, the number of people who are hungry is about 8.9% of the world population. And then in the recent year, they estimate that about 10 million people in 1 year have gone hungry. And it's likely to increase to about 60 million in the next 5 years.
Obviously, this the pandemic and COVID happened to increase. It made an impact on these numbers.
Yes. So with that, it looks like the world is not on track to reach the 2030 goal of achieving zero hunger. And so with that regard, from our access to seeds index, our key findings specifically in the Western and Central Africa, and also for Eastern and South Africa, with regard to zero hunger, we have some results we collected, and these key findings were shared in our 2019 index, showing how the region is performing and how seed companies are also supporting in that area. But if you look at West and Central Africa, according to UNFAO, also the number of undernourished people is increasing since 2014. And also this was highlighted that climate change is one of the major reasons of the increase. So access to new improved varieties is the main strategy for farmers to adapt to the climate changes. And then according to our key findings, there's a lot of number of companies that are acting in the region, and they have been increasing in the past decade. But when you look at the activities of these companies, because in 2019 we assessed 23 companies from West and Central Africa, only about half of those companies they conduct breeding activities. And so because there are few companies, we think this is likely reflecting the number of varieties that are older than 5 years old in the region for most crops. And then also in the country index, you can see that private sector breeding programs were not identified in about 70% of the countries we are looking at seed company activities. But on a side note, again, for the region, you can see that company portfolios are generally diverse. So they have field crops, they have vegetables, and they have legumes. But for supporting farmers, it looks like the training that is usually offered is a little bit less because it's only in a few countries of the index that we see that companies are giving training activities. So overall, in the whole region, if you look at it, is the industry delivering quality seeds and new varieties to smallholder farmers? No, it's not happening in the region. So there's need to step up their effort in the region.
So I have a question for you on that. You had mentioned something about breeding activities not happening in the region. So you know that in Africa, adoption of high improved seeds are quite low. So from this, I want to know, why is it that in Africa we don't have a lot of breeding activities with seed companies? And is there any, I don't want to say trend, or how do seed companies advocate for adoption of improved seeds especially in remote areas, like local remote communities for smallholder farmers?
So yeah, breeding is much more important because, like, seeds are definitely fundamental for agriculture. And if you see in the past few years, food production generally is like under pressure because there's population growth, there's all this climate change, there's shifts in the dietary for, structural shifts in the dietary for most people. So it means that farmers have to also deliver quality production, and that all starts with the kind of seed that they have access to. So the delivery of high quality seeds for farmers is very important, and that means that all lies in the plant breeding process. So plant breeding is very important for improving the crops and their varieties. And when you look at the region in most of the African region, a lot of the seed companies, it takes time for companies to develop their research and development capabilities. And it requires time for also this whole process of plant breeding. So there's that area that is considered to take some time, and it's a challenge generally for the technologies to be adapted. So that's one of the challenges that comes with companies that are smaller, mostly in the region, because we look at also local and national and regional companies, whereas like global companies usually have capabilities. And so with the fact that some of these company activities are limited in a few countries, it means that the activities also, how much they're producing and the kind of improved varieties that are going on the market, it's still limited. And it would require more companies to start expanding those activities and also working with farmers to just be able to produce exactly what farmers want.
And
So yeah.
and that is very critical for, even seed production, improving yields. So we still have a lot of work to do. So hopefully this would encourage more companies to
Yeah.
get involved. But I wanted to also talk about how your methodology, I know your 2021 methodology and scope, the index overview, is integrated with the WBA. So can you tell us more about it? Tell us more about the integration and how would have easy access to also this, how hopefully would have easy access to remote areas for smallholder farmers and
Yes.
private sector acquisition.
Yeah, nice. So Access to Seeds Index initially was developed from the Access to Seeds Foundation since 2012. And since then, it has already produced 2 editions of the index in 2016 and also in 2019. And it had looked like most of the objectives of the index since the beginning had been achieved. So that was starting with the goal to improve transparency in the seed industry. There was also supporting and encouraging leadership to work towards improving their efforts to reach smallholder farmers using the benchmarking tools, which we see that also encourages leadership, as well as all this information that we have has created evidence base for stakeholders to have discussion and also make decisions that still help farmers to have access to quality seeds. And so with all that work the index had done, reached at a point where it required to have a broader coalition. And one of the partnerships that Access to Seeds Foundation reached out to have was being part of the World Benchmarking Alliance because they were allies from the beginning.
Okay.
So once Access to Seeds Index started the integration into World Benchmarking Alliance in 2019, we have been aligning on different areas because World Benchmarking Alliance itself has already identified 7 transformation areas. And so one of those systems transformation is the food and agriculture transformation. And Access to Seed Index would be produced as a spotlight benchmark for the World Benchmarking Alliance and looking specifically into the seed sector. The seed industry is playing a big role for the whole movement that we want to create. And I guess everything starts small. So the smaller changes that the spotlight benchmark will be able to bring are all going to turn into the bigger transformations that we want to see also for the bigger global companies.
Wow, that's quite interesting. And I know access to seed has been, it's not new. It has a couple of years where the research and work has been done. But are there any difference in strategies that help compared to the last ones, or any new trend or transformation that helps tackle perceived challenges like, climate change, the drought issues? And why should seed companies and other stakeholders, why should they collaborate? What's in it for them?
Yeah, so with the new Access to Seeds methodology, which we actually just published on the 2nd of March, the main process for developing a benchmark includes also reviewing the previous methodology we had. So we had to go through a process of reviewing the 2019 methodology that had, again, all the areas like our research scope and our measurement areas and indicators. For 2021, we wanted to review it so that it can be more focused with the measurement areas and also to have fewer indicators that are also more, again, focused on what is expected from the seed industry. So with that, the new measurement areas and indicators we have, they are still covering all these topics that are important for stakeholders, especially from the leadership of and commitment of the leadership level, governance and strategy. We're looking at different measurement areas. Like now we have measurement areas that 6 measurement areas that are all detailed in 32 indicators. And so these indicators, they again reflect all these particular important bits that also touch on climate change issues. It talks about including women, new generation farmers. There's a lot of the work around research and development. So all these, what we did mostly for these indicators, it was mostly just making them more simple and very clear for the seed industry and also for other stakeholders to see exactly what we are asking seed companies to improve their efforts on. And then we usually wanted to also, so for this year, we wanted to also include questions around COVID-19 to reflect what's happening currently. So with the whole methodology that we have currently, and also the whole index, why companies and seed companies and stakeholders should collaborate with us, it's mostly because so far this is our 3rd edition of the index that we are developing. And if you look at the previous 2 and the whole past, the history of Access to Seeds Index, a lot of what was presented from the theory of change, it has proven to be more than the theory. So this is, for example, where we have seen that organizations that are very important, like GAIN or the Global Crop Trust, UNFAO, and other many organizations, they are using the Access to Seeds Index information to identify partners that they can work with. And this includes in testing and releasing new varieties, or promoting biofortified crops, or cooperating on using and preserving genetic diversity. Also, we have seen that governments, they're using the key findings from Access to Seeds Index to discuss national seed industry and where they can improve and step up their efforts. And so these are the discussions that usually inform policy development and also regulatory reform strategies. And then in terms of companies, we have encouraged seed companies to improve their targets, especially reaching smallholder farmers. And then also internally, they have started discussions on how, generally companies can do more for smallholder farmers. And then excited for the future indexes. In terms of why they can work with us, we already have this evidence of that for the dialogue and for where companies can improve, how stakeholders can help, how governments are helping. And the more we work closer with companies, we are also able to support them, get more stakeholders to come on the table and have these informed discussions.
So when can we expect when is the official launch for this Access to Seed Index?
Yeah, so the official launch of Access to Seeds Index can be expected in 2nd half of September in 2021. We are working towards releasing the index around the UN Food Systems Summit alongside the Food and Agriculture benchmark. And so the final production for Access to Seeds, it will include scorecards for each company. We'll also present key findings on the main trends, leading practices that reflect the industry rankings and also the company scorecards. And then we'll also talk about the key findings at the industry level on how seed companies are targeting the 3 regions for Western Central Africa, also Eastern and Southern Africa, and South and Southeast Asia, and how those activities of the companies compare and also complement each other. And then from World Benchmarking Alliance, all the benchmarks we publish, they're usually free and available to be used. Okay. So we hope that can empower governments, investors, civil society, smallholder farmers themselves, and also companies. And mostly, once all this is out, the main goal is just to make sure that investors can influence these companies. We want governments to do better policies. Then there's also civil society, which can direct their public support. And then when it comes to individuals, it's a matter of knowing, who is doing well and who would you rather partner with, and who do you want to work with. So yeah, the whole benchmark will pretty much reveal what companies and stakeholders, um, where they see each companies and how they compare against their peers, and how they can improve, and mostly what is needed to achieve the UN SDGs, the goal, especially zero hunger, which we seem to be off track now.
Thank you, Alice. You guys have done an amazing work. I've seen some of the reports from the past year, and I like the fact that it holds companies accountable, but also promotes some kind of healthy competition to do better in their different locations. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Good luck with the lunch, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I would say maybe final for us, it would be again just reminding seed companies and NGOs, civil society, everyone to work together, and also that we have a lot of data from access to seeds previous indexes that can be used. And we hope like all these insights can help inform how to move forward together, and also contribute mostly to the whole movement of reaching the sustainable development goals that we've set. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you.